Have you ever stopped in the middle of an ordinary moment and wondered if what you are experiencing is truly the world itself, or just a version of it your mind is creating for you? That question is not abstract or philosophical fluff, it is deeply personal. Because every joy you have felt and every pain you carry depends on the answer. If reality is something you directly experience, then your suffering feels unavoidable. But if reality is something you interpret, then your entire life has been filtered through a lens you did not choose. That realization can be unsettling. It can also be liberating, because it suggests that what feels solid and fixed may be more flexible than you think. From the moment you open your eyes each morning, your brain is already at work constructing your world. Light hits your retinas, vibrations touch your ears, pressure reaches your skin. But none of that is reality yet. It is raw data. Your brain translates, organizes, and labels these signals before you ever become aware of them. By the time you say this is a room or this is a person, interpretation has already happened. You are not encountering the world directly. You are encountering a mental model of it, and you live inside that model. This is why two people can stand in the same place, witness the same event, and walk away with entirely different experiences. One feels inspired, the other feels threatened. One remembers warmth, the other remembers fear. The external reality did not change, but the internal interpretation did. Your brain does not ask what is true first. It asks what is familiar, what is safe, and what fits your past experiences. Reality is filtered through memory, emotion, and expectation before it reaches consciousness. Neuroscience shows that your brain is not a passive receiver of the world. It is an active predictor. It constantly guesses what will happen next and adjusts sensory input to match those predictions. This means you often see what you expect to see, not what is actually there. When something unexpected happens, the brain rushes to explain it in familiar terms. Interpretation fills the gaps. This keeps you functioning, but it also traps you inside assumptions you rarely question. Think about how emotions shape your perception. When you are anxious, neutral faces look hostile. When you are in love, flaws disappear. When you are depressed, the future feels empty and heavy. These emotional states do not change the world itself, but they change how the world appears to you. Your reality shifts without anything external moving at all. This alone should make us pause and question how much of life is perception rather than fact. Memory further complicates this. You do not remember events as they happened. You remember them as your mind reconstructed them. Each time you recall a memory, it is slightly altered by your current beliefs and emotions. Over time, your past becomes a story rather than a record. And since your interpretation of reality is shaped by your past, you are often reacting to memories that were never fully accurate to begin with. You are living in an interpretation built on interpretations. Culture also plays a powerful role. From childhood, you are taught what matters, what is dangerous, what success looks like, and what failure means. These ideas sink into your perception so deeply that they feel natural. You do not see the world as it is, you see it as you were trained to see it. What one culture sees as freedom, another sees as chaos. What one person calls ambition, another calls greed. Reality bends around belief systems. Language itself shapes interpretation. Words divide the world into categories that may not exist outside the mind. Once something is named, it feels fixed. You stop questioning it. You say, I am anxious. I am not creative. This is just how life is, and those labels become boundaries. But these are interpretations, not laws. The language you use silently defines what feels possible. This is why suffering often feels so personal and so real. Pain is not just physical or situational, it is interpretive. The meaning you assign to an experience determines how deeply it wounds you. Loss hurts not only because something is gone, but because of what you believe that loss says about you, your future, or your worth. Change hurts because your interpretation frames it as threat instead of transformation. The pain is real, but its intensity is shaped by meaning. Consider fear. Fear is not caused by reality itself, but by your brain's interpretation of potential danger. You can feel terrified by a thought that has no physical presence at all. Your body reacts as if the threat is real. This shows how powerful interpretation is. The nervous system responds not to reality, but to perceived reality. Your experience follows perception, not truth. Even time is interpreted. Moments of joy pass quickly, while moments of fear stretch endlessly. Trauma can make a single event feel permanently present. The clock may move forward evenly, but your experience of time does not. Your mind bends time based on emotional significance. This means you are not living in objective time, but psychological time. If reality were directly experienced, then clarity would be constant. But confusion, misunderstanding, and conflict dominate human life. We argue over intentions, meanings, and perspectives because we are not sharing the same internal worlds. Each person lives inside their own interpretation bubble, convinced it is reality. This is why being understood feels so rare and so precious. It is a brief overlap of interpretations. This realization can feel destabilizing. If what you experience is interpretation, then what can you trust? The answer is not to reject reality, but to hold it more gently. Awareness does not remove interpretation, but it loosens its grip. You begin to notice when you are reacting to meaning rather than fact. This small gap creates choice. Mindfulness practices exist for this reason. They train attention to observe experience before interpretation takes over. Sensations are noticed without labels. Thoughts are seen as events, not commands. In these moments, reality feels simpler and quieter. Not because the world changed, but because interpretation softened. This shows that perception is flexible. This flexibility is where healing begins. When you realize that your inner world shapes your outer experience, you regain agency. You may not control events, but you influence how deeply they define you. You learn that thoughts are not facts and emotions are not permanent truths. Reality becomes less oppressive and more negotiable. This does not mean pretending everything is positive. It means recognizing that meaning is something you participate in creating. Two people can endure the same hardship and emerge completely differently. The difference is not strength, but interpretation. One sees a verdict, the other sees a lesson. One sees an ending, the other sees a turning point. Love is another example. Love is not just a reaction to someone else's existence. It is an interpretation layered with meaning, memory, hope, and projection. This is why love can feel magical or devastating, depending on the story attached to it. The person may be the same, but the experience changes when interpretation shifts. When you realize you are interpreting reality, you begin to question inherited narratives. You ask whether the story you tell about yourself is true or just familiar. You notice how often you assume rejection, failure, or limitation before evidence appears. These assumptions shape behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. Interpretation becomes destiny unless examined. This is not about blaming yourself for your suffering. Interpretation is not a flaw. It is how the human mind survives. It simplifies an overwhelming world. The danger comes when interpretations harden into unquestioned truths. Awareness softens them. Compassion untangles them. The most touching part of this realization is understanding that many people are not cruel, lazy, or indifferent. They are acting from interpretations shaped by pain, fear, and conditioning. This does not excuse harm, but it explains it. Understanding this can dissolve some of the bitterness we carry. It creates space for empathy without self-betrayal. When interpretation loosens, presence deepens. You begin noticing small moments without immediately judging them. A breath feels fuller. A conversation feels more alive. You stop rushing toward conclusions. Life becomes less about control and more about contact. You may never experience reality completely unfiltered. That may be impossible for a human nervous system, but you can become aware of the filter. And awareness changes everything. It creates humility. It creates curiosity. It creates freedom. So the question is not whether you experience reality or interpret it. The question is whether you realize you are interpreting it. Because the moment you see the lens, you are no longer fully trapped inside it. Reality may not whisper its truth directly, but in the quiet moments, when interpretation softens, you can feel something steady beneath the stories. And that feeling may be the closest thing to truth you will ever touch.